Hi everyone, and welcome back to some cooking adventures with myself, Mr. S, Mr. Sagatunov, or for those teachers I'll be watching, Paul. We're going to be making some sourdough hot cross buns today. So in the previous video that I made called sourdough starter, you would have seen me make some sourdough starter. So just to go back to that one there a little bit, obviously you need about 2-3 days to make that sourdough starter. So if you're watching this video now and you've only just made the sourdough starter, you probably won't be at this stage, but you still have a whole week before Easter, if not a little bit more, to be able to make this recipe, okay? Not a terribly difficult recipe to make. There are a few components, and again, you probably need 2 days in advance. So today, I'll be making the first part, the dough, the first component, rolling up the hot cross buns into their dough balls and then letting it rest or prove or ferment overnight and then baking them actually tomorrow. Okay, but we've done this a day in advance and I'll show you how that will work a little bit later. Okay, so I've already got my sourdough starter all ready to go in the bowl here. I've got some sultanas, my cinnamon and my mixed spice, my sugar, egg, room temperature butter, okay, and my flour's all measured out in my bowl here ready as well. I've also got my tepid milk, okay, so my warm milk that I've just had to microwave for a tad, okay. I've got a bit of flour in my shaker here for the bench, just to dust down the bench when I'm going to knead my dough, okay, so I would highly recommend doing that as well, having something like this, or at least having the extra flour next to you, okay. So to begin this recipe, I'm just going to be following the recipe that I've got here that I printed out next to me. I've also sent this same recipe out on the email with the link to this video, and I'll also be putting the recipe on the description of this sourdough hot cross bun video as well. Okay? So to start with, our first instruction is to, in a bowl, to combine the flour, mixed spice, cinnamon, butter, eggs, sultanas, and sugar. And then we're going to be after that adding the milk and the sourdough mixture until we get a bit of a sticky dough forming. So we've got our measured out cinnamon here and the mixed spice. Like I said, 1 teaspoon of each here together in this bowl. We've got our sultanas. We've got our sugar. Got my egg here and my butter as well. Just give it a light whisk too. That doesn't necessarily call for it. I still like to just do a little bit of a whirl so I can kind of control the amount of liquid that's mixed in with the dry ingredient as I kind of mix it together. So I'll put the egg into the middle as well as the flour, the butter. Alright, so that's just softened at room temperature. Alright, if you didn't do this prior to making the recipe, then you can put it in a microwave just for about 20 seconds or so, just to kind of soften it up a little bit. Okay, just so it's well combined with the flour. Alright, so I'll just mix that together in the middle. Just let me start adding the milk. So like I stated in the last video, the benefit of having a sourdough starter or using sourdough or having that on hand in the kitchen or in your refrigerator is that anything, especially like if you're looking at breads, if you're looking at a pancake mixture, if we're looking at pizza dough, anything can be changed into having sourdough as the kind of main component. So for example, if you wanted to make some sourdough bread, you would substitute the couple of teaspoons that you've got there of yeast for 100 grams of sourdough. Now, the other thing to kind of have in mind as well is obviously sourdough starter is a it's got liquid in it, okay? So it's not just pure dry ingredient like a yeast would be. So I would recommend adding a little bit less water to begin with, and then from there, just adding in as much as possible to kind of get a bit of a mixture together. Okay, so as you can see, we're slowly getting into it. Dough is slowly getting stickier here. Make sure we get all those components together. Make sure there's no liquid trapped underneath any of these pieces of dough. Bring it all together. Bench tad. Alright, so for those of you who don't know, or maybe just to give you a bit of a FYI, flour works in a couple of interesting ways. So when we're in winter, okay, flour quite often absorbs a little bit of that moisture. And as funny as that sounds, it's quite a unique thing. So when you are, especially when you're using a lot of bread type recipes, and it does recommend that you add a certain amount of water, especially in scone recipes. It very much depends on the type of weather. So if we're in a summer weather, it does dry out the flour a bit, it becomes a little bit more lighter, fluffier, quite dry, okay? And you might need to add a little bit more liquid. Same thing in the winter, where we do have a bit more wetter months and kind of that humidity in the air, and having that, so then as well, in the same way, the flour can also absorb little parts of that as well. So just kind of using that as a part of a little bit of a guide. Here, this dough here is quite good. It's probably a little bit on the dry side, but we're still not too bad. Just making sure that we don't have any liquid pockets here that could possibly have hidden away from us. Just give me a good knead. Also works well if we've got a stand mixer, which we do, but just for the benefit of this video, just using our hands is totally fine to be able to get this together. I'm just going to knead away. Alright, so we spent a little bit of time doing that. So about 5 minutes is good to just kind of give it a bit of a knead to kind of really work that and get that nice elasticity, alright, in that dough. Okay, kind of the working that gluten. And then what we'll do is we're going to split these up into 6 portions to get our 6-pack of hot cross buns. So I did have a tray prepared earlier. Now I usually am quite pedantic in the sense that I usually weigh all this and I'll separate it to almost a gram when I am kind of separating and making into the 6 parts. But just for the benefit of us sort of moving on a little bit quicker, I'm not going to do that to you. But if you like to eyeball it, to kind of have a look at how that would look like, then you can just keep splitting it in half until you get your 6 portions. Alright? For me it's just kind of that bit of that quality control and keeping an eye on making sure that we do have the same sort of sizes happening. Alright, keep splitting in half, and then we'll divide up this last portion among these ones. Right. So like I said, after this kind of stage here, where we roll these dough balls into a nice round shape and pop them onto the tray, I would usually cover it and either leave it on a bench if it's a bit more of a cooler night, but then also another option is putting it in the fridge overnight, just to let those kind of flavours and that fermentation kind of do its process, as well as a slow proving process. So we've got kind of 2 proving processes. One is obviously using our warm method, okay, either putting it on top of an oven, putting it out on a windowsill like we have here for another recipe earlier, just to kind of get that rising. So a lot of the time we'll do 2 times the proving process. One a lot of times for the flavour, and the second time is to let it rise. Okay, so for us, if we're doing it overnight and leaving it on the bench, then we'll be totally fine just to use it in the morning. If we're putting it in the fridge, you might want to let it just stand for about half an hour. Okay, let it stand for half an hour outside of the fridge before you decide to bake those hot cross buns. Okay, so for now, just getting these into nice round balls. Alright, so with a sourdough hot cross bun, you just see so many different ways. People either squish them all up nice and close together, so when they bake as a nice 6-pack and you break them away. Some people like to put them further apart and do the crosses all separately, kind of like gives it more of a round and that other rustic kind of effect. I like the traditional way. I do like them having them all nice and close together, baking them all as a nice 6-pack. They come out, you can then put it into a bit of a package it up nicely, it all stays nice and uniform and together. And then especially if you're gifting them to someone, it does look quite nice to do a bit of a DIY. So in the last video I kind of said it might be something nice, especially during this time we're going through with these difficulties. As much as we can bless people, the better. So if you want to bless someone with making some hot cross buns, especially with sourdough, the extra sort of rustic component, make them quite nice and dense and rustic looking, and also just as a little bit of extra something special that you made it, this is a perfect opportunity to make some. Okay, as you saw, it wasn't really too long to make that first little part, adding everything together. This part here pretty much does it on its own by leaving it either on the bench or in the refrigerator overnight. And then our final little bit is just going to be actually baking these hot cross buns. Okay, so like I said, in usual times, as they are right now, I would cover these hot cross buns. I'll put them in the fridge, or I would leave them on the bench nice and cool. Alright, so that's our hot cross buns right there. Come back here. Alright. But just for the sake of today, I am going to put the crosses on first, alright, just to show you how easy that is to be done. And we've actually had some hot cross buns already in the oven from earlier, which should be ready any moment for us, and we'll just do the last glazing process. Okay, so generally, like I said, you'll take these out of the fridge maybe half an hour before you want to actually put the crosses on and bake them. Leave them out for half an hour, then do that. If you've left them on the bench, then it's totally fine. You can get onto those crosses straight away. And then as soon as they come out of the oven, you want to have your glaze ready, which you prepared on the stove, okay? Which is down to step 4, so adding those ingredients together, letting that all kind of just warm through on the stove, dissolving that sugar, and then once the hot cross buns come out nice and hot, you want to put a good amount of that glaze on, almost using up that portion that has been allocated there on the recipe. Okay, so for today's time, I'm going to just I'm going to put the crosses on, and then I'll let it prove afterwards. All right, because these are going to be my own home ones that I'll eat, and I don't really mind if they're done a little bit differently. Okay, so all we do is just start from one sort of side. Keeping that steady hand. Alright, so there we go. Alright, just getting those crosses nice and on. And we'll just get ready something that I prepared earlier. There we go. It's all ready to come out. Alright, so I'm putting a bit of a board down, a bit of a tea towel. Okay, some nice fresh hot cross buns there. Alright, as soon as they've come out, you've got your glaze that you've made on the stove. Make sure everything's dissolved nice and well. And we just do a nice, generous bit of glaze on over these hot cross buns. Alright, just letting these cool down. As soon as it's kind of well enough to touch, I would try to take them off the baking paper as soon as you can and putting them on a bit of a cooling rack. Okay, you don't want to do it instantly as soon as it's still quite hot, but you want to do it after they kind of cool down just a tad, because as well you don't want them to sweat underneath, and you kind of, once they sweat, you get that, it just becomes a kind of soggy bottom, okay, and that's not really pleasant for anyone. All right, we still want that little bit of crispiness on the outside and that nice bottom, okay, and there we have it. All right, our hot cross buns. All right, sourdough, very, very impressive. All right, I'm gonna show you blow everyone's socks off at Easter. All right, so enjoy.